My name is Richard Crowson, and I am an editorial cartoonist, which is something a little unusual, I guess. A lot of people don't encounter many of us editorial cartoonists because there aren't a lot of us. I fell into this profession actually in college because I was asked by a journalism teacher to do some cartoons for the college paper. This is in Memphis, Tennessee. Because no one else wanted to. And he knew that I had a little bit of background in art. So I started cartooning there, did quickly, this was in the early 70s, did quickly some cartoons about the college administration and fell in love with that part of the job, which is disrupting normal, I should say. In high school I'd done cartoons, but they really kind of sucked. They were mostly along the lines of, let's beat the Panthers Friday night. But when I got to college, I was able to, because I was fired up by the spirit of the 60s, basically, I was able to draw cartoons about politics and campus politics, and I fell in love with that process and getting the feedback that came with that. I majored in art and history, double major in college, and I was hired to work for a small newspaper in Jackson, Tennessee. This was about 1978, a long time ago. I was their first editorial cartoonist, and I worked there for 7.5, almost 8 years, and then came to Wichita, Kansas, where I finished out my career as a full-time editorial cartoonist until I was laid off in what I think of as the Great Cartoonist Massacre that took place in the early 2000s. I was laid off after 23 years of full-time work at the Eagle. I believe that's right, if my math is correct here. Then they contracted with me back to just draw cartoons on Sundays for the paper. So that also freed me up to draw cartoons for other publications, which I hadn't been able to do when I was a newspaper cartoonist full-time, which was great. And one of those other publications I've recently started cartooning for is the IEM Journal. So I'm kind of excited about this process, and maybe I can disrupt a little normal here at the IEM Journal. Right to work is an issue that's been followed me through my career, being from Tennessee and now in Kansas and these right-to-work states. So I have done cartoons on the issue over the years, and now that we know that it's becoming a national issue and there's talk of national right-to-work efforts, so I was happy to jump into that issue as a cartoonist for the IEM Journal. When I first began cartooning, I did begin to get hate mail in the South. I was in a small town in the South. I started out in Jackson, Tennessee, which was about a 50,000 population town. Yeah, I really did hack off a lot of people when I first began cartooning, and especially the positions I was taking. One of the first cartoons I did was about, in this small newspaper in this small town, was about the subject of doctors granting medical transfers to students to avoid white students being bused to certain schools that their parents didn't want them to be bused to. So these medical transfers were an issue. Well, I started drawing cartoons about it, and I called those doctors bigots in my cartoons. I literally said that in my cartoons. My phone rang off the wall for a while there, and I got lots of hate mail. But it just sort of fired me up more. When you're in this profession and you aggravate people, that's your touchstone. That's how you know that you're in the sweet spot. That's where you should be as an editorial cartoonist. You should be disturbing things. You should be making people take notice. And we're not evangelicals. I don't think of myself as wanting to win people over to my side necessarily. I just want to stir things up so that they think about their positions more. They might decide that their position is the right one after considering it, but at least I'm stirring the pot a little bit as a cartoonist, and that's really all I'm trying to do. I've had a lot of fun with the cartooning over the years. I never fell out of love with it. It's a long-running romance with me. The whole process of drawing the powers that be and making fun of the powers that be and stating at the same time, hopefully, an emphatic political opinion in the process is one that I just checks all the boxes for me. I always tell people to be an editorial cartoonist, first of all, you have to be interested in politics, social issues, you have to love to draw and be in love with the process of drawing, and you have to be a smartass. And all those boxes I checked very easily. So it's the perfect profession for me. The first person that told me I was a smartass in a sort of a gentle way, in a sideways sort of way, was my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Edwards in Memphis, Tennessee. And the way that happened was I did a caricature of her to entertain my classmates in the back of the classroom one day. And they were giggling, and I was having a great time drawing her. This was in the early 60s, and so I've got the cat eye glasses on her and the great beehive hairdo and bees buzzing around her, and just having a good old time until I notice my classmates aren't laughing, and I look around, and it's because Ms. Edwards is standing behind me watching this process. She told me indignantly to go up to the front of the class on the chalkboard, we had chalkboards in those days, and just redraw that for the whole class. I don't know if she thought that was going to be a punishment, but it actually was great fun for me, and the class laughed, and I got a big kick out of that and learned an important lesson, which is you can caricature the powers that be and have fun at it and make people laugh in the process. I mean, what's not to like about that whole thing? So Mrs. Edwards, my 4th grade teacher, got me started on this bad pathway towards editorial cartooning. My parents always were dubious about the whole thing. It's like, you're going to make a living as a what? And my dad and my mom always said, you need to have something else to fall back on. So I joke that I learned to play the banjo, which is probably the only profession less stable than political cartooning. So I do a little bit of both, and now I'm able, with some social commentary music that I do, to draw cartoons and sort of make up songs that go with them. And I do this for the local National Public Radio affiliate in Wichita, KMUW. I've always drawn cartoons that had a very progressive and sort of liberal slant. In Memphis, where I grew up, not a hotbed of progressivism, the Deep South. So any cartoon I did was practically going to be considered radical by the powers that be. Drawing about labor issues was always part of that process for me because they were in the news a lot, especially during the Reagan administration. The fire, probably the first strong memory I have of drawing them is when Reagan fired the air traffic controllers. And I remember jumping into that with all 4 feet and getting some hate mail from the conservatives in the area about that. But that was probably the beginning of my interest in some of the labor issues. The process of turning into a progressive in the Deep South is probably, I don't think it's that unusual for a lot of people of my generation. I was heavily influenced by the 60s. And the whole idea of rebelling against whatever you were taught was one that really took root in me. And my parents were probably about the most conservative, classically sort of bigoted type people that you could think of. And it's hard for me to say this because I loved my parents. Most people do, and they had a wonderful side to them. But they were both very poor North Mississippi, from very poor North Mississippi families, and white families, and that is synonymous with prejudice and bigotry in the South. So I was raised right smack dab in the middle of that sort of mindset, and the '60s kind of the ideas that were flowering in the 60s, no pun intended, flower power, all that, really impacted me, and really made me question authority and question the things that I had been raised to believe. And I completely rejected all of that, and much to their dismay, drew cartoons that were liberal and progressive. One thing that my dad taught me was that if you believe in something strongly, you stand up for it, and you let people know about it, your beliefs. And although his belief, he let people know about some beliefs that I thought were terrible, I took that lesson to heart. And my beliefs were different, but I wanted to have the same approach that he did, that he taught me, which is stand up for it, say it out loud, let people know about it. That was a contributor to my being attracted to editorial cartooning, no doubt.